Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to review The Little Rascals Save the Day. Or is that what it's called? Because I kind of went on a Little Rascals binge. I went on like this little, I don't know what happened, like it was like this thing. It was almost like an experience, like a Little Rascals experience, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch episodes of the show, and then I'm gonna watch the original movie, and then I'm gonna watch the new one, and yeah, Little Rascals Save the Day. But before we get to that movie, let's start off with the original series. So I was never really attracted to watching this show because I thought it looks very babyish. It looks like something that, even as a kid, I thought this looks babyish. It doesn't look like something that I would enjoy. I thought that it looked very goofy and very old-fashioned as well. And the show is pretty interesting, though. I mean, it is kind of funny. I watched one episode called Spanky, and because it looked like the most controversial. I mean, they had all the Little Rascals in blackface and stuff like that, and they were doing this slavery play, and I thought that'd be funny to watch, and so I watched that one. And yeah, I mean, there are some weird things. I mean, the episode starts off with what is essentially like a Looney Tunes cartoon in live action, and you have Spanky, and he's like this little tiny kid, and he has this little tiny gun, and I didn't even know they made guns this small. Like this rifle is essentially like as big as a ruler. Like a little, like a regular ruler. It's like a little kid's gun, and I was like, who would get this for their kid? I guess because it doesn't shoot real bullets, but still, it looked very, very real. And like, I'm perfectly okay with like toys, but this looked like uber real, like to the point of where it was actually able to shoot like little pellets or something. And so he was trying to shoot this fly, and from there, he had the dog with him. I really liked the dog. I would say my favorite member of our gang is the dog. I thought that the dog with the ring around his eye is just too cool. He's very, very well trained, very nice and likable. So yeah, I hope that's not disappointing that I like the dog the most. But anyways, they chase this fly around, and then the kid gets a hammer. He's got a hammer in his room too. Like this Spanky is like, he is insane. Like this Spanky character, he is a Looney Tunes live action character, and he takes this hammer and he's like smacking the ground. He's trying to get the fly, and at one point he hits the dog right in the head with the hammer, and I thought, oh my god, like this is I was like, this is so funny but so like wrong. It's so it was just shocking to me. Like, it was very fun to watch, though. I was like, they never do this nowadays, that's for sure. There's so many things just within this little opening scene that they'd be like, no! And then the rest of the episode is all about them putting on this play, and it's a little racist, for sure. But it's funny, too, so, I mean, I really don't care. It's just like with agendas nowadays. Like, if there's a movie that has a bunch of agendas in it, but if it's good, then I'll say that it's good. And it's like the same for this. Like, if there's like a racist movie or a movie that has like some racist stuff in it and it's good, then it's still a good movie. Sorry, I mean, that's just how it works. And, I thought it was kind of gross, this show. It was very grungy and very like dirty and almost like home videos. That's the kind of interesting part, is that it was so like nasty. Like, this reminds me a lot of Trailer Park Boys, but for children. And then Spanky, he just does nothing but cause trouble, and like he's spilling money out of the window. And like I did not know what was going on this episode with these characters. Like, it was just like they really, really are troublemakers sometimes. But then you also have like the jerk characters who are like the bullies, and they were kind of disrupting the play. But yeah, I thought it was an okay episode. It probably wasn't the best episode to watch as like a representation of the whole series. Like, I think that maybe like an episode that's more centered on Alfalfa would be better to watch, since he seems to be the main character. Like, I watched this video about the show, and they made it seem like all the characters were kind of like the main character, and they all had their like own episodes where they could shine, or their own storylines. But in that one episode, it didn't even really feel like a Spanky episode, except in that first scene. It just kind of felt like an ensemble. So yeah, I give that episode like a C+. And that's being generous because of the racism stuff. I mean, they had this one part, too, that was really disturbing where, and it was supposed to be like a joke, and you had the slave master, and he was supposed to be whipping Uncle Tom, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna put a switch to you, or I'm gonna clobber you one, and he's just about to whip him, and someone, in the backstage closes the curtains, and so then he's not able to whip him. And I thought at first, oh, this is kind of smart, like you're just going to hear the sound effects, but you're not going to see him getting whipped, and so that would be kind of smart, a lot better to do probably. But no, then they do that over and over again until the slave master is like, would somebody get that guy out of the way? And then they pull this guy away from the curtain cord ropes so that he can't close the curtains anymore. And then the slave master just whips the shit out of was his name like Stymie or Simey or something? I can't remember. I'll have to check. But like, I thought that was kind of dark. That was a very dark moment on the otherwise like playful show. But yeah, I mean, all the kids were good. And there was something really cool that they were doing in the... Oh, Stymie. Yeah. There was something really cool that they were doing throughout that episode with sound effects, with using sound effects for the play. And they were doing this special thing for the coughing. This woman had a cough. And I like that a lot. I thought that was very creative. So then I got to the 90s movie. This movie, I saw a trailer for it a million times as a kid, and I said, I'm never watching that. That looks like complete garbage. And I was wrong. It's just like with Edward Scissorhands, where it's like, wow, that movie is probably one of the best kids' movies I've ever seen. That Little Rascals 90s movie, it was so good. I kind of wish I could just do a review of that all by itself, because then I'd have to watch it again. It was kind of interesting because, they also made that Leave It to Beaver movie, and it's kind of interesting how in the 90s they made these adaptations of television shows where they took place in the 90s, but they felt a little bit like they were in the 40s or 50s, because like the Leave It to Beaver movie is clearly in the 90s, but it still has like a little bit of a 50s feel to it. Like, it's really, really weird. Isn't that like strange? Like, can you guys think of any other movies where like they take place in the 90s, but they kind of have like a little bit of a 50s or 40s feel to them? Because I just think it's really like cool how they're able to do that, because I think about why can't they do that nowadays, Like, whenever they have to make an 80s throwback, they have to make it take place in the 1980s. Whenever they make a 90s throwback, it has to take place in the 90s. But you had all these movies in the 90s where they'd have it take place in the 90s, but still have, like, the spirit of the 1940s or 50s. And this movie was just, it was phenomenal. I mean, like, I was thoroughly entertained the entire movie. There was a lot of clever comedy. All the characters were perfect. I thought this movie is like a near perfect movie. Like, I should have watched this as a kid. It's actually very, very good. It really feels like it stays true to the characters. Alfalfa is a good character. Pretty good character, I guess. And yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble thinking about it now, though, because I watched the newer one after that, and I'm kind of just thinking about that now. But yeah, I really loved that. I loved the 90s movie, and I thought it was a very good choice to watch that yesterday, especially. Trying to think of what my favorite part is, though, because that'll tell you guys that I actually watched the movie, and yeah. Let's see. This is tough, actually, because, like, I swear I'm having trouble, like, remembering a lot of the movie because of I remember the Olsen twins were in it, which was pretty interesting. They're in it for like 2 seconds. And then they had a couple other good cameos. You know, one of the things that I really loved about the movie, too, was that instead of getting well-known actors to play the kids, it seemed like they got kids who looked like the characters and acted like the characters. And then they got well-known actors as, like, the smaller roles and the cameos, and I thought that was a really, really smart choice and smart thing to do. You know, because nowadays, whenever they make a kids movie, or whenever they make any movie in general, they never cast unknown actors anymore to, you know, so that they can actually look or act like the characters. They always just cast the same old people. You know, like, oh, what's that new movie coming out? Oh, it's that movie that has Timothy Chalamet. And, oh, what's that new movie coming out? Oh, it's got that one girl, Sydney Sweeney. Oh, what's that one movie coming out? Oh, it's got that Elvis guy. You know, like, they just can't, like, get off of these people. Like these people, cast them for the roles that they're meant to play, and then cast unknowns and cast people who actually deserve the other roles. Because, like, it's really irritating, and it feels like this movie did a perfect job at casting. And I'm trying to still think about what was my favorite part, you know. I mean, I really like the scene where Alfalfa takes Darla on a date to the clubhouse, and the Little Rascals completely ruin it, and they completely sabotage it, but that wasn't my favorite part of the movie. I don't know. Feels shitty that I can't even remember my favorite part. I mean, honestly, the Trump cameo was really funny at the end. And it got even funnier in the ending credits. You know, I really liked the ending credits where they had these bloopers and deleted scenes, I guess, and things. And I think that this was Trump doing this, you know, on his own. Like, I don't think it was a part of the movie. But he steals this woman's popcorn. I think that was a deleted scene. But then he puts it in his mouth and he eats it. And then he spits it out on actors that are sitting in front of him that are like extras for the movie. And he's like, it's not even good popcorn. It's not even very good. And I thought, he did that himself. That was not a part of the movie, clearly. Like, and I thought that was really gross spitting food on extras, like, ugh. God, I can't think about what's the best part. I mean, the whole movie was the best part. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to move on. Like, sorry guys, like, I'm letting our gang down, because overall, like, I thought that the 90s movie was definitely the best thing that I watched out of the three things. So finally I watched The Little Rascals Save the Day. It's got Jenna Overrated Ortega. And the movie starts off, and you see a few characters, and they basically filmed them in a way where, you know, the audience is supposed to already know who they are. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense, you know, because people who watch this movie, they're probably going to be people who have seen the other ones. Well, then, right after that, 5 minutes later, they have all these intro screens to tell you who these characters are. And I was like, that's really insulting. Like, after you told us, after you thought that we knew these characters, all of a sudden you feel the need to, like, put up these screens to say all their names. And I thought, like, you know, the audience is not stupid. Like, I guess that was for the kids or something, like kids who've never seen Little Rascals before. But I thought that was very stupid. And I felt like that was insulting. And also, Buckwheat, his character, he has an afro now. No idea why. I thought that was a stupid choice. That was one of the dumber things in the movie. And I was feeling really upset about having to watch this movie, because I immediately saw this one was 15 minutes longer than the original movie. You know, it's like an hour and 40 minutes. It's almost 2 hours. And it started off, and to me, this movie, it felt like a Hallmark movie mixed with a porn parody, or like a porno. You know, like those pornos where, like, they have the story, you know, like, and I'll say this, like, I can't stand, like, porn scenes with story. Like, I was watching a video yesterday in the morning. I can't confirm or deny that it was a porn video, but let's just say it was. And 5 minutes in, they're still not even doing anything yet. And it's like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I came into this video. I came into this video so I could see something go on. And instead, I'm just watching this stupid shit. They're pretending like they're making a movie. These actors suck. They're terrible. You know, they're not actors at all. The clothes, just everything looks so cheap, and it looks so thrown together, and it's like, why did they do this? Like, just get to the action. Get to the stuff that I came here to see. And so, at the end of the video, there's like 3 minutes left in the video, and that's when they finally do stuff, and it just wasn't enough. And so, like, I had to put on another video, because, you know, I've noticed a lot of what they do on these in these adult websites is that they'll have these videos that are like 12 minutes long, and like 10 out of 12 minutes will be shit that you don't care about and isn't going to help you get anything accomplished. And then the last 2 minutes, finally something happens, and right at the end, they're like, you can go watch the full video at this website where you have to pay for it. And it's like, fuck off. Like, seriously, fuck off. I go to this free website so that I can see the free stuff. I don't come here to be advertised to go to other places to buy videos, you know. So that was really irritating. And this movie, it just felt like a porno. Like, the characters, there were these two really, really uninteresting characters who they hardly added anything to the movie at all. And that was the kid's teacher, Miss Crabtree. And then the sheriff or the deputy, like Deputy Dumbo. And the one thing I'll say is that they gave this overweight guy like a really, really hot love interest. Like, seriously, like, she looked like she could be in adult films. Like, she just looked really, really pretty. And then he just looks like this schlubby, normal guy. And I thought, wow, like, that's surprising they do this in 2014. You know, you'd think that she'd have to be with the pretty guy who's like, you know, any of the, all the ones that are in the mainstream movies nowadays. But no, but their characters, they were so, goofy and childish. Like, they were even more childish than the actual children. The guy was not a very good actor at all, too. Like, no, well, actually, neither of them were very good actors. That's why I thought this is like a porno. It's like, because, you know, then in the next scene, it's like, oh, you know why they're here now, because they're taking their clothes off and they're doing stuff. But no, they never take their clothes off. Which I'm kind of glad about, because I feel like the guy who made this movie, if he tried to shoot like an actual like adult scene with these two characters, like, it would probably be really, really awkward and weird looking, you know? Like, the whole movie has this weird lighting where it always looks like there's this orange, yellowy light that is like invading everywhere. Like, you know those certain days where, like, it's really, really sunny and orange, glowy, it's glowing orange in the evening? That's what it looks like all the time in this movie. All the time. And it just has this fake look to it. And in fact, the guy who made this movie, it's really weird, because he made Inspector Gadget 2, which is like one of my favorite kids' movies. It's kind of like a guilty pleasure, a little bit. But then he made Jingle All the Way, too. So that was surprising, because this movie, I'll just say that I kind of liked it. I kind of liked this movie as well. It was very harmless. It was very light. It's very comforting. Excuse me. It's like a comfort movie. Oh yeah, I like the part in the 90s one where Alfalfa drinks the bubble liquid and he blows bubbles. That was funny. That movie was so good. Like, that movie has to be, like, celebrated forever to me. Like, I can't believe I didn't watch that movie as a kid. But anyways, one of the things that's kind of weird about this movie, one of the modern touches, is that, you know, in the original series, in the 90s movie, they have what's called the He-Man Woman Haters Club, which I want a t-shirt that says the He-Man Woman Haters Club owner or something like that, you know, I don't know. But that was kind of the journey of the 90s movie, too, which was really cool, is that, like, the whole journey of the movie was at the end, they respect Darla, and then they allow women in the club, and I thought that's really nice and sweet, like, because it didn't feel forced, it felt very natural, and it felt very, very good. Well, in this movie, they already allow girls in their club, so I don't know if this is trying to be like a soft sequel to the original movie. I'm really not sure. Like, I don't know. I'd have to read to see, like, if that's what they intended. And Jenna Overrated Ortega, she's already in the club. And this was kind of a weird part where, like, they called her a boy or something. And she was like, I am a real girl. So she's got to pronounce she's a real girl in this movie. That was kind of strange. Because I was like, yeah, we know you're a girl. So that was kind of weird. Like, she's not really like a tomboy. You know, I mean, I guess she is a little bit because she's not wearing, like, pink dresses all the time. But at the same time, like, she's really not, like, a hardcore tomboy. And you know how I can tell? Because nowadays, they don't allow tomboys to exist anymore. If you're, like, a girl who dresses and, like, kind of styles yourself to look like a boy, like a tomboy does, then they tell you that you should be a trans man nowadays. There's no such thing as tomboys anymore, because like tomboys, they don't want tomboys to exist. They just want you to transition at that point. So I thought, like, no, she's really not a tomboy, because I've seen tomboys. In fact, I saw this one tomboy at Goodwill today, and she like avoided me for some reason. It was really strange. Like I was checking out, and I forgot to put this thing back, and I was going to put this thing back, and she looked at me, and she made this, like, weird face, and then she, like, stepped away like she was going to hide somewhere or something. It was really bizarre. I was just, like, on my way to putting something back, and it's like, yeah. Of course, who knows? Maybe that was a trans man. I don't know. You can never tell anymore. Like, sometimes I look at Bernie the cat, and I wonder, what is that? Like, is that a boy, or is that a trans boy? Like, I don't know. Nobody can tell anymore. That you have to ask them, and how do you ask a cat? Hey, Bernie, you're asleep now, but are you a transgender cat? Nope, he's not. He's not able to answer. He just stretched his arm out, and he was like, "Nah," but he couldn't answer me. So then all the kids, they go to this bakery that they like to hang out at. The movie's all about, like, this kind of Hallmark movie story where this grandma has a bakery, and her bakery is going to get closed down. And it's going to get torn down, and it's going to be developed over. So it's really, really a typical Hallmark movie. And these people order a red velvet cake, and the Little Rascals decide to cook it. And I thought it was kind of funny. Jenna, Wednesday, she puts real red velvet in the cake, and I thought, that's like something Wednesday would do. Or maybe put blood in it or something. But then it turned into a Goosebumps episode when all of a sudden, like, the cake, they put too much yeast in it. And so the cake, it was, like, growing to the point where it looked like it was monster blood or something, and it was going to eat the children. And it kind of reminded me, too, of that I Love Lucy episode where the guys were doing all the cooking and the women were out working at the factory. So I thought that was funny, but kind of over the top. And then I liked how in the 90s movie, Mel Brooks was playing the main bank guy. This guy who supposedly gives people loans at the bank was played by Mel Brooks in that movie. But in this movie, he's played by Inspector Gadget himself. I thought that was a nice cameo. Let's see. Yeah, and then Waldo's father actually makes an offer to the bakery woman to buy her bakery for $100,000 so that he can tear it down. So that was another thing that was like typical Hallmark movie stuff where the rich big business person makes an offer on the small business person whose place is going to close down. One of the unfortunate things about this movie, besides the fact that Alfalfa looks like young Sheldon, that's one of the kind of distracting points, is that he really looks like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. But one of the unfortunate things is that a lot of the humor of the movie is really, really like cliche, been there, done that jokes that we've seen a million times. Like hitting someone in the balls. In the original movie, they had really, really clever humor. Like, there was this guy, the guy who talks like this. And he was like, a girl moved in across the street. And everyone was like, ew. And he was like, she wanted to come over and play. And you know what I did? And he's like, I pulled out my lizard. And he pulls out a real lizard and shows them. And it's like, that was just so obviously like a dick joke. And I thought that was like a really clever, funny joke. And you put that up next to this movie where it's like the joke is, oh, isn't that funny? The dogs are running wild and the leash is dragging the guy along by the leash, and so he's getting dragged around on the ground. Isn't that really funny? Oh, at one point someone crashes into a car and then flies away somewhere and just crashes somewhere. Isn't that really funny? You've seen that a million fucking times. You know, like these really, really typical kind of lame kids movie jokes. And it's like, I wonder if kids, if they actually like remember these jokes being in every single movie they watch. Or if it just kind of goes right over their heads and they forget about it. And then the next movie they watch it and they're like, oh, that's really funny. He gets kicked in the balls. Like when I see things where people get kicked in the balls, I get really kind of upset because I know what it's like to get hit in the balls. Like emotionally, physically, it's really not very fun. Ugh. And, you know, there was this one time as a kid, well, there were two times actually. There was one time where, well, it's in my book. I was, this kid was like going to stop playing with me so that he could go just play sports all the time at recess. You know, he was a real weirdo who was like really a two-faced yes man weirdo. And he was very, very like flip-floppy and just really, really shitty. And he was going to play sports all the time. And I just went on the field so that I could shake his hand and say, like, you know, I understand you can play sports all the time. And this was the second grade. And he came up to me and he was going to shake my hand and pretend like we were all good and everything. And then while he shakes my hand, he knees me in the balls. And then he runs away. And like, yeah. And you know what's fun? I can't believe as an adult now that after that I still allowed him to continue to come back and like, you know, be forgiven for that, because like that was really, really bad, you know, and he didn't even get in trouble for that either. That's what was crazy. Like, you know, that was really bad. Like, you know, that should have been like a suspension or something like that, but no. And then at another point, because, like, keep in mind at this point, like, we didn't really have the bullies that were in the Little Rascals movies where, you know, they beat you up and they threaten to beat you up or they steal all your money. You know, we just had, like, shitheads who, you know, they're kind of, like, two-faced and, or people that, you know, did other things, you know, besides, like, physically, you know, beating you up and stuff like that, like in the show in these movies. And then another time, I was just sitting on the couch playing with a flashlight. I think it was the third grade. And it was one of those big black flashlights, too. And it was a big one. It was like a close to being like a foot long. And I fumbled it like a football. And then it dropped right on my balls. The blunt end, the hard end where you unscrew it and you put the batteries in there. It got me right there, and that was not fun. That was terrible. I was crying, and I was crying a lot with that getting kneed in the balls in the second grade too. Like I was like, that was probably one of the most painful experiences of all time. And to think it's like this very funny gag that's in a lot of TV shows and movies, it's kind of like, yeah, you'll laugh, but if it happens to you, you're not going to be laughing anymore. That's why, like, when people say, like, rape jokes aren't funny. Don't laugh at rape jokes. And it's like, well, these same people who tell you that rape jokes aren't okay, they're perfectly okay with, like, jokes where people get hit in the balls. And it's like, getting hit in the balls is not a joke either, by the way. Like, because I can laugh at, like, either of those, but, like, still, it's just kind of hypocritical. And, sorry, Safi just texted me the strangest question I've ever heard. And let me read it to you guys, because you guys are going to laugh you're going to laugh your asses off. She texted me, and she says, wasn't Miss Nutbrock your math teacher? Like, who the fuck is Miss Nutbrock? Like, what the? And, okay, let's move on. That was weird. I don't know why this kind of thing happens. Whenever I do review, it's like Safi always has to, like, come in with something, like, really strange and unexpected. Like, wasn't Miss Nutbrock your math teacher? Like, what the hell? I think a big issue with this movie, too, is that for the majority of the movie, the Little Rascals screw up at everything. And in the movie, in the 90s movie, and then in the original show, they weren't total screw-ups. Like, they were very smart and competent at some points. They did mess up because they were kids, and it felt very real. But they weren't complete screw-ups all the time. Whereas in this movie, they practically screw up the entire movie, except for the very, very end. That's another thing of, like, how cliche it is. It's like, because that's very cliche. And then there's a very strange musical sequence, too. I'd say that's probably my least favorite part of the movie. Young Sheldon, he's going all over town hanging up flyers, and it's him and Darla, and they're singing together, and it feels like something in, like, a musical, and it's just totally out of place. I really did not like that at all. Also, another big problem of this movie is that in the 90s movie, I keep saying in the original movie, in the 90s movie, Waldo feels like a rich jackass guy. Like, he feels like just a regular rich jackass. Well, in this movie, he has a Trump haircut. That's, like, the only part of him that feels kind of like that fits the character. But his character, this Waldo kid, they make him, like, closeted gay. Like, he acts like he's a closeted gay kid. His father acts like a closeted gay man. And they even have this guy who helps them practice for the talent show at the end of the movie. And he's clearly gay. He's very flamboyant. And so, like, but they changed the character from just being, like, this rich guy to being this closeted gay guy as well. And so that kind of takes the stakes away from the movie a little bit, because, number one, you're thinking, this little rich boy, he can have any woman he wants when he grows up because he's a rich boy. He'll get all the gold diggers he wants, all the models he wants. But if he's closeted gay, then it kind of takes away from the conflict between him and Alfalfa, competing for Darla's affection, because you're thinking, why would I be intimidated by a closeted gay person, like, in trying to court a girl? Why would I feel like I was up against someone really, really tough? Like, because I'd be like, this is kind of silly. I could, I guess it's because Alfalfa can't figure that out himself. But, like, yeah, they really made Waldo into, like, a closeted gay kid for some reason. I don't know why. But, like, it was totally... Now Safi's going to text me again. I wonder what she's going to say next. Like, Like, what's she gonna say next? Like, wasn't Miss Chokes on Dick your school teacher? Like from South Park. I don't know. And then another point in the movie, because the kids, they're trying to raise money for the grandmother and her bakery. And we'll talk about, there's a big plot hole in this movie that we'll be able to discuss at the end. And it's really, really silly when you think about it, because basically the whole movie was kind of pointless by the end of the movie. But the kids are somehow able to run a taxi cab service. This isn't really a real car, it's just something that they throw together. And they're somehow able to run this service where they drive people around town. And it just feels very unrealistic. Like in Leave It to Beaver, they had an episode where Beaver gets a go-kart, or he makes a go-kart or whatever, and he's only allowed to drive it around the block. But then instead he drives it with Larry out onto a regular street, and he gets a ticket as a little boy. And I felt like it was very silly how these kids are just able to run a taxi cab service. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that Waldo, he's got like a car or something, like a little kid's car that he's driving around town. And I don't care like how rich he is. It's very weird that this is allowed to happen. It feels very, very silly, cartoonish. So what happens is even worse in the fact that Waldo cuts the brake cables, and this would have killed them in real life. The Little Rascals, they would have all been killed at this point. But, they do that typical thing where it ends like in a very silly, cartoonish way, and they crash. And the police officer guy, he's like, "You've broken so many laws." And I was like, yeah, where were you the whole time? Like, or where was any police presence anywhere? Because but still, like, Waldo cut their brake cables. At this point, this Waldo kid, he is a serious bad kid. He is a criminal, because that would have killed them. And, if the policeman did any investigating, instead of just worrying about the girl that he's trying to marry, the stupid teacher, then he would have seen that car was sabotaged with, and, he could have put that little kid's father in prison or something. Like, that would have ended that conflict right then and there. And the cop and the teacher, too, their story is really, really weak. They spend the entire movie going out on a date practically. Like every single scene that they're in, like the joke is that every time they go out on a date, the Little Rascals mess it up somehow. And like just the whole movie is them going out on dates, like very, very weak sauce. And then also another strange choice that they changed from the original movie is that instead of the gang having a boy who talks like this, they have it to where one of the bullies talks like that. So that one of the bullies has the voice that one of the Little Rascals is supposed to have. And that Little Rascal is not even in the movie. And then they get to the wrestling plot where the kids want to raise money by throwing a wrestling match. And you guys are probably like, this movie really sucks. So this wrestling plot, it's definitely the stupidest one out of the money schemes that they have throughout the movie. Because the entire plot hinges upon a big, fat, and taller bully putting on a costume that this little skinny kid was supposed to wear. Because Waldo pays the bully to go backstage and take Spanky's costume from him and disguise himself as him. And this is a costume that is meant for a little skinny kid. And you're telling me that this fat, taller kid is able to take off this kid's costume and wear it and it fits perfectly? Like, that's just totally dumb. Like, they should have just had the smaller bully do it, you know? Because there was the big and fat one, and then there was the small skinny one. And so why didn't they just do that, you know? That was stupid. And then also, their whole plot was that they were taking people's money, and then they already had everything fixed. So they had it set up to where the referee would make a hand gesture, and then Spanky would take a dive. And I thought, that's really bad. Like, that's not a good lesson to teach children, that you should cheat like this. And so Alfalfa, he was also, like, being overtly, like, he was being very, like, upfront about how he was cheating, because he kept on talking with the referee, and they were being really louder. No, not Spanky. Spanky wasn't the guy who was going to wrestle. Spanky was the referee. But, like, they were talking out loud about how, like, I'm supposed to win. Why isn't he doing the plan? Talking very loudly. And so I wasn't upset at all that Waldo did this, because number one, if this was a fair fight and Alfalfa lost, then it actually would have made the match more entertaining. Because nobody wants to watch, like, a fake wrestling match where people, especially kids, where kids are just, like, playing around and they're pretending like they're wrestling. They want to watch something real. And if you had the bully beat up Alfalfa, it could have backfired in a good way. But instead, the Spanky had to bet all their money against Waldo that Alfalfa would win. And so I really didn't feel bad for these kids when their plan backfired and when Waldo won all the money, because I felt like that's what you deserve. And then Waldo even said, like, yeah, you cheated, and I just cheated better than you. You know, like, we both cheated. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Like, you know, F these little rascals. You know, they're cheaters. Also, the plot doesn't really even address how it would be impossible for these children to raise the money that they needed to raise. She needed $10,000. She got $5,000 from selling off old stocks, which was nice. But all these kids had to do was make a GoFundMe or something, and they didn't do that. And, you know, in the 90s movie, what happened that is kind of like an interesting thing you could put up next to this is that in the 90s movie, their clubhouse gets destroyed. It gets burned down. And they go to this lumber guy, and they're like, we'd like to buy some lumber. We need a lot of lumber for our clubhouse. And he's like, how much do you got? And they have, like, a couple of coins. They just, like, have, like, $1 or so. And he gives them, like, this tiny little wooden thing. And he's like, do you want a paper or plastic bag for this little tiny thing? And, like, see, that was very smart and very realistic. And it was also a funny joke. But in this movie, the kids are acting like these little schemes are going to help raise enough money for the bakery when they need to raise $5,000. I mean, it's just kind of silly, and it's kind of like, you know, this is really not well thought out. And then after they lose this wrestling match thing, there's a sad period of the movie. So you guys know how much I like sad periods. There was a sad period in the original movie too, though. So, just being fair about it. And the whole reason for the conflict in the sad period is really stupid too, because it really doesn't feel like it's a conflict that fits in this movie. It feels like a conflict that fits in the original movie. Because in the original movie, Spanky is like a huge jackass. And he's a huge, like, bossy, just a jerk. And he was almost like the villain of the movie, too. Except Waldo was a little bit worse. But they had the conflict in the movie be that Spanky was being too bossy. And I thought, like, they really didn't do a good job at, like, having that be, like, an actual conflict in this movie. Because I really didn't even notice very much that Spanky was wearing on them and that he was being, like, a real shithead to them, So I felt like that was totally, like, just shoved in there as something that could have been a plot in, like, the series, I guess, but didn't really fit in this movie at all. Now, let's get to the big plot hole of the movie, and you guys are gonna lose it. The talent show's prize is $10,000, so it's more than enough money they need to help the grandma keep the bakery. So the funny thing is that instead of trying to pull off all these schemes and scams throughout the movie, they could have spent this entire movie practicing for the talent show instead, since the talent show, the prize is $10,000. Like, why didn't they just do that? It would have been so much smarter, and it would have been better than doing these stupid schemes. And then we get to see the talent show a little bit, and let me just say, I hate talent shows. I really hated them. My school especially, they threw the worst talent shows. I guess because nobody at my school really had any talent at all. But they were just the worst. They were so boring. You had to sit through those things of these little kids who thought they could sing and stuff, and it was just so like, ugh. Like, there were several times where I debated whether or not I should, and I was like, no, it's just not worth it. And you got to see this little talent show, and it got to the point where it was Waldo's turn. And Waldo and Darla, they had, like, the gayest... This was the gayest scene in the entire movie. They did this song and dance where he's talking about how she's his candy girl or something. It was so gay. I was like, this is clearly, like, this character is clearly supposed to be, like, a closeted gay character. And it's very weird that they decided to do that for this character, since he's not like that in the original series, as far as I'm aware. But then the Little Rascals, they do their song. And I thought, you know what? Our gang did a really fantastic job with their song at the end of the movie. So for that's why I actually gave the movie a higher score than I would have if not for that song and dance, or just the song, because I felt like they were really impressive with that final. Like, I never really enjoy those types of things. As I told you guys, I hate talent shows, but I really enjoyed their song, their rendition of I'm Your Babe or whatever. So overall, I thought this was actually a pretty good movie. I thought it was a very good movie for a kid's movie. It was surprisingly good. I mean, this movie was only made 10 years ago, and it's 10,000 times better than Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. The grade that I would give this movie is a birthday cake shake from Steak and Shake, because I've been to Steak and Shake a lot throughout the years, and I've always resisted getting the birthday cake shake. It's something that I thought, that's obviously gonna suck. But last year, the year before, I got that shake, and I thought it's one of the best shakes I've ever had. It's vanilla milkshake, and it has pieces of cake in it, like yellow cake and sprinkles. And it's really, really delicious and tasty. And it's exactly like this movie where I did not expect any of this Little Rascals stuff to be any good at all. And it turned out to be very good and very entertaining. And I would highly recommend all of the Little Rascals catalog, including the original series, even though I probably should watch more of those episodes. So anyways, please like this video and comment and tell me what you thought of all the Little Rascal stuff. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.